Jen.
Hi.
Hey. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We had a chat. I'm trying to think. It was over a year ago.
Yeah.
It was one of my favorite podcasts. Sorry, Dan. I know I've done a few with you. You're also awesome. Dan is the producer in the background. But I really loved the conversation, and it was online, and I was like, oh, if we had this in person, I would be like really excited about this. So I'm delighted that now we have this opportunity. I send so many people your direction to look at your page, look at your content. I've worked with and continue to work with a lot of people who are in recovery, have an eating disorder, have been in and out of Willow Grove or PATS, and also then working with a lot of adults as well, young adults who are in and out of PATS. And so I'm just really excited about this conversation to offer families, parents who are listening, but also the clients that I work with, just a lens of hope, and like this is like the model of how things can go. Not saying that everything is perfect and idyllic, but it is good. Yeah. So thank you so much. So for people who don't know you, do you want to give a brief introduction? I hate asking that question, but I think it can be helpful.
So my name is Jen. Some people refer to me as Jenny or Jennifer, so you take your pick. I am 24 from Tipperary, and usually when I do these things, I'm like, do I list off all my achievements, or do I just kind of, but I suppose just give a bit of a background of, I suppose why I'm here today is mainly due to my own experiences. So I would have suffered a lot with my mental health from a very young age. And actually even saying that now, I'm kind of thinking to myself, like, did I suffer with my mental health, or did I respond appropriately to experiences I had?
Wow.
You know, like,
a great frame.
Yeah, like and that's the big shift for me the last year is like,
great frame.
It's actually quite appropriate. It's not that I have something wrong with me, or, you know, other people function better than me. It's that my body has responded pretty appropriately. And as a result, I've experienced a lot of anxiety and fear and low mood, which then later on manifested into an eating disorder. But I was 14 at the time when I got a diagnosis of anorexia, and I always thought that was when that was when I began to struggle. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized, no, like I couldn't go to preschool because I was too anxious. I couldn't leave my mom. And it was all these things that I was now realizing, oh, this is actually much older than I thought. This isn't just I'm 13 now and I'm conscious of my body. So I'm going to, you know, try to lose some weight. All surface level. And I suppose as a 13-year-old, that's how you cognitively maybe, you know, can relate to what's going on. But yeah, through my own experiences, I would have went on and become a speech and language therapist. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I missed a lot of school due to being unwell. And then, so I think in an ideal world, I would have liked to have went on and done medicine, but I think that probably was my perfectionism as well, that like, this is the high achieving degree that everyone wants to do. So I didn't do that. I was allergic to nursing because of all the protests and people telling me to stay away from it. But I wanted to be in a helping profession. So I said, right, let's just try SLT and see how we get on. And throughout that, I would have, I suppose, struggled up and down with my eating disorder, became a personal trainer in the middle of that, which in hindsight was probably coming from a pretty disordered space as well. And then through that, I began my own recovery again, which happened multiple times. And I went on and trained as a breathwork facilitator, and have been looking so much more now into the, I would say, trauma-informed side of an eating disorder and how my nervous system is impacted. And just, it's helped me understand my experiences so much better. And I think something that you mentioned there when you were just chatting about eating disorders, which just, it stuck with me, is like this, and I hear it all the time. It's like, I work with people who are in and out of St. Pat's. They're in and out of Willow Grove. And it's like, wait, why are they in and out? Like, what's going on? Why? There's something missing here. And I see it with a lot of mental health conditions or addiction in particular, that the people in my life would be going in and out of these treatment centers. And I think even when you're working with, I would have been of the belief that when working with kids, that if they're not interacting in a session, that's kind of on me, because like, how can I help them feel comfortable? And it's kind of the same with an adult in treatment. Is like, it's easy to put the blame on the person and say, oh, it's not working for them. I have so many friends who would have been in recovery from an eating disorder and told they're like, what's the word? Like, they're not, I don't know why irresistible is coming. Not irresistible. They're resistant to treatment, that
non-compliance.
Yes.
And like those kind of really unhelpful terms.
It's so horrible. It gives people very little hope and a real sense of like, there's something wrong with you. And I think, through working with clinicians in the past, the most validating experience is for someone to say to me, like, it makes complete sense why this is why you're doing what you're doing. Because you get a sense of like, okay, like, maybe I'm not the problem. That doesn't mean you don't take responsibility for maybe things that you're doing, but it gives you a sense of like compassion for yourself, because no one would be stuck in an eating disorder if they didn't want to. No one wants to be unwell.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's that understanding that there's a lack of, which I suppose it's hard when you haven't experienced it, maybe if the person is sitting in front of you trying to help you. But I think it's the education and the lack of maybe that trauma-informed piece that I think people are missing. And I see it so much more as I've began to learn how I see myself in others who are struggling maybe, or who are where I was a couple of years ago. And there's that lack of understanding on their behalf that like, this isn't, there needs to be more focus here than just challenging your fear foods, because there's an underlying like sense of, I'd say, unsafety and fear. And again, we spoke earlier about that control piece, which is definitely an element of it, but that can be manifested into loads of things, like people obsessing over lots of different things. So it's a long-winded.
It's a great. There's loads in that, but I think the validation piece of what you said there, for clinicians that are listening to the podcast, that maybe that's what people need to hear is, it makes sense, and I understand why. It's like if we're working with anyone, if we're trying to have a trauma-informed or neuroaffirming approach, trying to stop behavior without understanding there's a need behind it is the wrong approach, because you may be able to force somebody to eat and put on weight, but the underlying issue is going to be there. So can we try to deepen our understanding of spending time understanding what is this need expressing? How do we fill that need, that void, and whatever's going on for them? Because I've heard that you're not treatable and you're not complying with what I'm asking, and it's really rigid. And we spoke before on your podcast. I actually find I haven't went through an eating disorder, but I've worked closely and have had friends that have. I find it really challenging, the medical model approach of getting people to stand on scales and getting people to hit a certain weight and then feel like our job is done. I was looking at some of the research around the percentage of people who are underweight with anorexia, and it's as low as 6%. So if we think that we have met their needs, 94% of them have already had those needs met with being at the appropriate weight. Something is happening. And I worked really closely with a young lady, fab person. I adored them, worked with them for years, and really tried to work with them and hear their perspective of their own eating disorder. But like that, they said, I would do anything to kill this part of me. I fucking hate it, because every time I have food and I have this joyful moment with my family, I'm looking at how much they're eating. I'm looking at, am I going to eat too much? Everything, every trip, every celebration, everything is consumed by. And the work that we were doing was the more she was fighting against the eating disorder, the louder the eating disorder became, and it was nearly befriending it. And we're befriending this part. In other words, being really compassionate with this part, because the eating disorder served a purpose of protection to help us understand that there is maybe safety in this. While it may have become maladaptive, it held a purpose. And when that compassionate relationship was built to the eating disorder, she became compassionate to herself. And it was like they had a big hug and just departed ways. That I thank you for what you have done. You saved me for when I needed to be saved. I don't need you anymore. I'm okay.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I wonder where, I have so many questions, but I wonder for you, was there a moment of, or are you feeling like it's an ongoing in recovery, or was there a moment where you hugged and said, thank you, but I don't need you right now?
I'd say I had like, I would say a couple of like recovery attempts, moments where I was like, right, we need to do this. But every time I did that, I was like further on, if that makes sense, because I had experience from the last time. But I would say that it's only in the last maybe year or so that I have kind of detached. Like, an eating disorder is this kind of, it's a clinical term, it's a diagnosis. But actually, when you speak about like parts of us, it is kind of a protector part. So now, as I like today, I would sit here and say that part of me is always there, but it doesn't feel the same need to maybe take over. So I like to think of like all my different parts in, like, I can't remember who gave me this analogy, in like a bus, and they're all just there. And I really relate to that kind of looking through it as a compassionate lens, because it's just your brain will do whatever it can to try to keep you safe and regulated, I suppose, in the moment. So I used to view my eating disorder as this like thing that was just here and it needed to be gotten rid of, but it's actually a part of me that needs understanding. So I think the diagnosis is helpful in a way of it helped me understand what was going on, but I felt like I had something, like I had a thing that needed to be gone, but it's actually that part of me is sometimes louder, and then it's sometimes much quieter. And I noticed that is when, if my life is very stressful or I am going through a difficult period, I can sense that trying to pull me back. Yeah. But I have a really different understanding of it now, that it's not this kind of, like when I was in treatment, it was taught this was, it was really be angry at the eating disorder and tell it to F off. But it's actually, it is a part of me, and it's probably quite a young part of me that just wants to feel at ease. And I would say there's a dissociate element of it too, of like, it's crazy how well it works when you're so distressed as a young person, then to focus on your food. It's like instant ease. Like, it's just this instant sense of like, okay, I'm okay now. And that's why it's so, I would say, addictive and so difficult to get out of, is because, I know when I went into treatment, like, it was all behavioral. It was all eat the food, gain the weight, get on the scales. And that's really actually traumatizing for a young person. Like, the distress I was in and the screaming and the breakdowns and, the punishment for not doing that. I just didn't feel safe to do that at all. And it's like, there was nothing, you'd be given like some Play-Doh to play with or watch a movie, but it's so distressing for someone to just be thrown into that and be force-fed. And I think I definitely have experienced a lot of, I have a lot of really, I would say, traumatic experiences from that, and then, after a meal, like having to be watched going to the toilet and, watched in the shower, and like, there's a real lack of autonomy in that, and, you feel it nearly reinforces that sense of like failure or look at what I've become now. I can't even, it's, yeah, I don't know. I know it's hard for professionals to know what to do, but I definitely feel like it's quite disempowering, I feel.
And I think you probably already feel a lack of autonomy over yourself if there's an eating disorder. Part of us is speaking quite loud.
Yeah.
And then to have our adults reminding us that we don't have autonomy over our bodies and this is what we need to do. Is that real disempowering that continues to disempower? In other words, that you will always need this level of managing for you to be okay.
Yeah.
That's really traumatizing, the idea of being force-fed, being watched, whether you are in and having a shower or you're going as a child. Like that is horrendous experience to go through. I know that at some points, and I know you've said this before in the past, that these places have saved your life, and without them, I work today and have worked with people who've been there, and they said, I will never go back. I will die before I go back. It may have saved my life now, but I will never return. And I know the people working in these places, the intent is good. This is not me out with a pitchfork against them. I think from a cultural perspective, we need to really reframe it, relook at it, and check in more with the compassion focused piece. And like all of the work that you've done probably over the past year now with breath work and connecting with the body and understanding the nervous system and understanding what that means. I think this isn't recognized enough, or that if we sit with these uncomfortable emotions, that they can pass, or we take learning from them.
Yeah.
So it's telling us something. Yeah. A lot of maladaptive behavior that we have in our lives, whether it's alcohol, porn, gambling, eating disorders, it's avoidant of maybe sitting with if you were to come back as a clinician and work in places like some of the treatment centres that you would have been in, how would your approach be different?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is like when you meet someone, to ask them what it's like asking them what is it like to be you? Like,
what is it like to be you?
Yeah, like, because people are not there for the crack. People are not eating and doing ridiculous amounts of exercise and all these things because they want to be thin, or there's such a gap there. Like, it's assumed that, I think, every eating disorder is the same, or like the amount of people I've met who've turned or used an eating disorder for so many different reasons. And I think that's, even when I say it out loud, it's a really nice phrase that I would have loved to have been asked. You know, I would have said that I feel so afraid, you know, and it's like, what is that fear? Like, on paper, it's I'm afraid of food, I'm afraid of this, but I'm actually just really afraid inside. And it's nothing to do with the food or my body. And I know that now. And I realized that I couldn't do any more of this kind of CBT, challenging behavior exposure therapy. Like, that gets you to a certain point, but then I kept going back because I didn't heal or work through that underlying fear. Like that, I came so far with just maybe challenging fear foods and, you know, talking therapy, but I couldn't fully let it go then. I was still holding on to stuff. And I think, trying to understand the person sitting in front of you. And I think titrating someone into recovery is helpful as well. And that, like we were saying earlier on, like, everyone is very different. So I know for me, at certain points in my recovery, I needed a really slow, like, gentle approach. Whereas, like, other times it was like, right, let's go.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's probably depending on your current health as well. It will, like, I was at different states in terms of weight as well, that I was more cognitively able to be like, actually, fuck this, like, let's go, you know? Whereas other times it was too much too soon, because it was my whole world now and I needed to slowly move in away. So, I think that's the big piece. I think the huge, a shift away from, like, weight is, I think obviously weight is important, but I don't really think it's beneficial to discuss it with the person sitting in front of you in terms of like, I think the worst thing is like saying, well, your weight is fine. Like, you know,
So you're fine.
Yeah. Like, what does that mean? My weight is fine. Like, disordered eating and eating disorders aren't just about fat loss. They can just be about like chaotic eating, you know, and it sometimes doesn't impact someone's weight at all. It's just that they could just be eating loads in the night and then they don't eat throughout the day. So they probably are maintaining maybe a healthy weight, but it's very dysfunctional and it's very unhealthy and they feel terrible. So because small percentage of people's weight is impacted, really, if you think about
6%,
it. You know?
Yeah. Like I was surprised to see that.
Yeah.
And I actually have worked with one person and they always said, I'm afraid to put on weight because I'm afraid that if I put on weight that the supports around me will go.
Yeah.
So like then for us to query that, like, so they felt the success would be them putting on weight. They feared putting on weight. It was nothing to do with food. And rarely when I have these conversations, it is rarely about body image. Or sometimes it is around body image. But they knew that they got more care, love, kindness, people around them. So how do we then come and meet them with more kindness, care and love? And they won't feel a need to maybe have that as like a cry for help, an obvious one that I have that support around me. Yeah. You mentioned exercise. So this is one that I'm curious from your lived experience. And I said before we started recording this, and if anyone ever listens to Jen will always give that point that this is all from your experience, that you're coming from your lens. So I don't want to be like, you now know all of this. but the exercise piece for me is one that I actually find very difficult to navigate with other clinicians. So I've worked alongside, I'd be the outsider occupational therapist with the team, and I'm probably the outsider because I work for my own private practice, but also my approach is very different. I'm a bit of a risk taker when it comes to working with young people. In other words, we get outdoors, we get into the water, we take risks. Even if they're at high risk of suicide, I will still go for a sea swim with them because for me, it's a positive risk. The risk of not engaging in these interventions could be the risk of death versus worrying about the risk of death when we're there. So for me, I am like, let's break down what's happening in their body and all of the research that I've ever looked at supports movement, supports regulation. Movement supports regulation. Yeah. If we have a person who's dysregulated versus giving them meds, I wonder if we can bring movement in. But this is where the pushback comes. Yeah. And I've seen people in recovery get punished for going for a walk. Yeah. I went for a walk, but I ate enough calories and they were shunned. These occupations, what we would say in occupational therapy, these occupations, meaningful occupations, hobbies that people would have engaged in, dancing, walking, running, gym, they were told to stop all of them. And for me, understanding our wellness, this is about engaging in life. Where are your thoughts from your lived experience with exercise? And do you see the purpose of going, oh, I definitely couldn't? Or are you like, I needed it for my nervous system, for my body? Like, where are your thoughts on exercises and recovery through eating disorders? Because I'm like...
Yeah, I know. It's really difficult. Yeah. And I went through so many different phases of how I felt about it. And I think what has come up for me now as you're chatting about that is the level of fear that a clinician can put in you as well, of that panic of you went for a walk, like, or you, like, it's as if you've ruined your recovery. Yeah. You know, there's this real, like, instead of being like, okay, like, how did it feel to go on that walk? And was there anxiety? Was there kind of force that you needed to go? And it's like this, but you just feel like you've done something wrong. It's your fault. Whereas it's like, you can't really do anything wrong in recovery, but like, there's nothing wrong with going for the walk. It's about understanding if it was supportive for you. And you kind of do need to give people autonomy and help them trust themselves in recovery, because I felt like and still now I'm struggling at times to trust myself, not just in terms of movement or my food choices, but even like in conversation or in relationship. Like, you do really lose your kind of sense of self in an eating disorder because you feel like you're so controlled by that part of you in your head. So I think this all or nothing, it almost can help, like it nearly puts you in that other extreme then of like being afraid of everything. Like, I went through a phase of being terrified to move because I associated it with just being disordered. And I was so traumatized from my eating disorder that I was like, no, I can't exercise. I went through a phase of like, I can't eat. I almost was afraid to eat anything, quote unquote, like healthy. So if I had like a piece of fruit with something, I'd be like, oh, was that disordered or was that? So it was all like projection from other people who were like, you're not in recovery if you aren't having chocolate for everything. So it's the same with the exercise thing. And I think it's about like, you don't want to go from one rule to the other, but there is also, that element of looking after yourself and your body, that like sometimes some people do need to rest for a period of time, which is very difficult, like with how dysregulating that can be. But I equally don't know if forcing or banning that is helpful for the level of distress a person will experience. And I've spoken to people so many times, and when you actually work with someone and understand, maybe they're doing 7 days a week of like, I don't know, 3 hours of something. And if you ask them to, for some people, they will be able to go down to 6 days and then 5 and then 4. Whereas other people are like, no, I'm done. I think it's the panic that professionals put in these people that is actually problematic. Instead of, you'd be scared to go in and say, oh, like, let's say you do skip a meal or you restricted, and you'd go, I remember being in my CAMS team and going in and saying I didn't, my parents would say, she didn't drink her milk now at dinner. And I'd be like, oh no. But like, it was such a, I felt like I was so bold that like, again, that's a rule. Like it's so rigid again. And it's trying to find that balance of, I remember going in one day and I was weighed and my weight was up maybe. So they aimed for us to gain 1 kilo a week. And I remember one week, I think I was up 1.6 or whatever, which again, totally normal fluctuation, like fine. But I was asked, did you binge eat this week? By the quote unquote like specialist eating disorder dietitian. But I completely spiraled. I was like, oh my God. But like her fear completely projecting onto me, which showed me how unhealthy her relationship with the scales was, that she couldn't just say, this is a 15-year-old girl, her period is coming back and her weight is up slightly more than we want to control it to go up. And then I questioned, has she binged? Like, which I hadn't. And if I did, again, don't project that fear onto me. 100%. Because, so I think it's really, really clear when you can see someone else's panic. And I think for a lot of people with eating disorders, we're particularly anorexia, like highly sensitive, highly intuitive, and very attuned to another person's energy. So that fear that you put in them of like, oh my God, you've lost weight this week and it's terrible. And it's like, it just drives that anxiety. And I think it's very unique to people in terms of exercise. I think there's definitely people who really need to take responsibility of how it might be impacting their health. Like I had lost my period for so long and I was exercising way too much. And I had to be like, I had to have a chat with myself. But I don't know what I have survived if someone pulled it from me. Like, I think I would have had to go into hospital, like with the level of distress. I would have had to be medicated. Like, it's so intense that like, where's the fine line of, you can't just expect someone to like if you're pulling exercise away from them, then you send them home. Like there needs to be a good support system there. And if there's not, then, you know, you have to work with that person and see what is doable for them.
What is doable for them.
Yeah.
And it comes back to that question that you would have liked to have been asked, what is it like to be you?
Yeah.
And for me, all of those should be coming back to being curious with somebody as, so how does it feel to have put on 1.6 kg versus statements of did you binge? Like it's so let's just ask questions.
Yeah.
How does exercise feel for you?
Yeah.
The people that I've worked with closely, they were really honest about their reason for exercising, their reason for, and they would say to me, oh no, I absolutely increased my steps because I knew I ate this amount and I was, versus I actually just really wanted to walk and be free with my friend and not think about anything and just be. So rather than this kind of controlling of behavior, being really curious of what the behavior is telling us, and let's just ask questions. There's so much learning for us. If we are so rigid in our approach, we only have one lens, and for me, the complexity of the human experience, we need to just be open, because what is working for Jen is not going to work for the next person. What is working for that person isn't going to. And I've had that. I've worked with women and men. I've worked with young women and young men, the exact same profile. I'd be working with them on the exact same day and same parenting style, same background. My approach with them will be so different from that time to give you a kick up the bum, we got to keep moving, versus you just need to be held now.
Yeah.
If I like push a little bit, it is just above what your threshold can cope with. That takes just being curious and I suppose understanding the client that's in front of us, where they're at in recovery. Where we're going to get that knowledge is by asking them questions, being really curious, and they're being curious with their relationship with exercise. Because I do find that at times we're replacing medication, and I am not saying don't take meds for many of the people that I've worked with. And I can't say this lightly enough, it has saved their lives. Like they would not be here if they were unable to engage in therapeutic supports until they were like had meds to feel well enough that they could talk. Yeah. So it is, but in some situations we can incorporate other approaches that can support regulation that doesn't necessarily have to be just meds. It can be movement, it can be breath work, and knowing what you know now as a breath work practitioner and facilitator. Is that something that you feel could have been supportive in your early stages, or would that have been all just too much to sit with? And like what you engage your breathwork facilitator now, but when you were 15, 16, 17, are those toolkits, would they have been helpful back then?
I think like the biggest thing that I feel now is like I was never, I wouldn't say taught, but I was never encouraged to sit with what I was feeling. You know, it was always, you're just constantly discussing and focusing and hyperfixating over how anxious you are about this meal coming up. And no one would ever question like, well, okay, what is the feeling underneath that? Like, and I know as a 14-year-old or whatever, I would have been like, I just don't want to gain weight.
Yes.
You know, so, but it's like, okay. And it's like trying to work with that and be like, okay, what does the weight gain? It's trying to understand what's coming up for you. I don't know, would I at 14 have been able to understand that? But I definitely feel like it's just so surface level recovery at the minute. It's so cognitive, it's so mind orientated that it's not until you begin to understand your body. And I think one of the biggest things for me is understanding like that you do have there is a threshold for stress. And when you go above that, it's just counterproductive. Like, and I think about that when I'm thinking about younger people in recovery or anyone in recovery, like sometimes someone is just not able to do the thing that you want them to do. Like you will say to someone, you're not allowed to go for that run today. And like, it's too unsafe for that person to just not go. Like, is there something else we can do? Like, maybe we'll do a little bit less, or like, maybe we'll go out for a meal after, or it's trying to work with that person because it's just, and I think it's really, I've really connected to listening to my body. And people will, like people who are listening who maybe have experienced an eating disorder, if someone makes a suggestion to you, let's say you're meant to be going for this long run that you usually do, and they say, no, you're not allowed to go. There's this complete sense of panic in your body. Like you feel that. Then if someone says to you, okay, how about, you do, instead of an hour, you do 45 minutes. There's probably a bit of, okay, that's manageable. Like so it's trying to connect with your nervous system, and there is still going to be discomfort, but you have to, there's no point in driving yourself absolutely just off the rails, because what will happen is you'll end up doing 5 hours of running tomorrow because it's too much too soon. It's too much for your nervous system, and it's too unsafe. And I think that's what breathwork has helped me understand, is like, it's okay if I can't do this right now. Like an example would be like, I'd want to go out and get a pizza, and then I want to get a dessert, and then, I'd want to get some like drinks and a cocktail, and I want to do all these things. And like, it's okay if I can just manage the pizza today, because the level of distress that I'm going to experience, maybe I'm just not ready. And that's not, you could look at that as avoidance, but you could also look at that as like actually titrating your nervous system into feeling a little bit safer to trust you. And like, there are levels of distress that some of them are absolutely manageable and healthy, but most people, well, I'd say everyone knows when it gets too much and you actually just can't function. Let's say you have to call in sick to work, or people who have to go on medication or go into hospital or whatever it is. It's that complete, like, I can't do this anymore. And you don't want your recovery to feel like I can't do this anymore all the time. And I think what you said is so important about you do need to push yourself, and you are going to be upset and uncomfortable, and to allow that and cry and be angry. But there is an element of like, you will completely shut down if you push yourself too much. Yeah. There is a fine line as well. Like, you can't expect, if you're 10 years in an eating disorder and you expect to wake up and just go to a buffet at breakfast and eat everything. Sometimes you get an urge and you get a bit of motivation. You say, oh, fuck this, I'm going to do it. But then after, it's so distressing that you're thinking, okay, maybe I need to just do what I'm comfortable with now, because it's about building up your, I suppose, support around those distressing experiences. But I do think I was so hard on myself for not wanting, I tried so hard not to be disordered. So everything was full fat, everything was high calorie, I ate no fruit, I ate no veg. I actually stopped eating like protein because I thought it was like disordered to eat a high protein meal, because it was for me, because I would just eat loads of chicken and a small bit of rice, whatever. But like, that was just rules again. And it was like, okay, I remember someone said to me, Jen, if eating a bit of protein keeps you sane in your meal, like, it's okay, but it was, and you can bring that back to the exercise as well. Like, it's just, your mind is it's what I would gauge from that is my mind is still trying to find control. So I actually haven't dealt with what's going on, because now I'm trying to be the most recovered I can be. But it's an obsession. It's not a relaxed energy. It's not a calm. There's no ease. It's all panic. So I was like, right, I obviously haven't figured out what's going on. And it's only in the last year that I've kind of come back to that balance. But I think it's understanding my nervous system and being able to support myself through my breath to like, I don't use the term calm down actually, because that's a very kind of, what I sense from that is I'm too much. I need to calm down. I need to shut away how I feel. But it's actually, no, it's to validate my experience. The breathwork, it helps me kind of be with it. You don't need to shut it down. You're trying to be with it. And yeah, I can't, like, I think so many people eating disorders are just suppressing constantly. And there will be a bit of an influx when you start to feel again, particularly when you start to eat regularly and your body feels a bit safer. Like there's this huge influx, and that's typically where people are put on medication. And it's like, no, we don't always want to. Sometimes we do need to, maybe it doesn't feel manageable for a person, but we do want to let it come out. And people around you, if they're not able for it, that's because they don't have the capacity to hold you. It's not that you're too much, you know. And I do think a lot of people, there's a lot of dysregulated people in the world, and it's hard to find someone who can really sit with you and allow you to just collapse into them without it really impacting them. But when you do find those people, it's pretty good, you know. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I think when we're surrounding ourselves with people who we love, when they're so emotionally invested into us, sometimes their distress, we allow it to become our distress, and we're not the right person for them. And that co-regulation piece doesn't just stop with kids.
No.
This is 100% with adults. I know myself, the closest people that I have around me, I know they feel more regulated when I'm there and there's a calm presence and things are good. And I know it also allows them to fully express their anxiety and their nervous energy or their sensitivity. I think there's a few things that you said there, and a few people that I've worked with in this process of eating disorder, ordered or disordered eating, they're perfectionists, and therefore they utilize their perfectionism to recover. But exactly what you described, they've just translated that anxious energy into this anxious energy in recovery, and they're never being. And that's where sitting with our body, and like that, I hate that idea of calm down. Like, imagine saying that to somebody, let alone saying it yourself. We should be able to express tears and sadness and joy and laughter. There's a cost to the human experience to feel the depths of laughter and joy and love comes at the cost of tears and sadness. And I had a beautiful conversation with Dr. Aoife Durkin. She's great human, but she's a highly sensitive psychologist. And we spoke about highly sensitive people, and I have highly sensitive people in my life. I love highly sensitive people, but for some of the part that upsets me is when I hear them saying, I wish this was shut down and I don't want to be, because I want to be able to just have a conversation without having a cry. And I hear that, and it makes me sad that they want to stop a part of who they are when I love all of who they are. I think they develop better relationships when they can hear that outwardly, that the world accepts them for that sensitivity that they have. But to know when we are working with highly sensitive people that they are highly in tune with us, that critique, that judgment, that don't do that very micro expressions on our face of lifting our nose up and expressing disdain, like, or disgust. They read that. And I feel the work that I do with people who've experienced eating disorders is very similar with the work I do with people who've experienced complex trauma. It's working off the body, and it's bottom-up approach. It's in tuning with the body. What is your body seeking and needing? How can we support regulation? Regulation does not mean calm. If I'm very regulated when I'm running. I'm very regulated when I am swaying in a chair. I'm very regulated when I am playing basketball. I need different times to be regulated, and my body needs to have different levels of energy. Regulation doesn't mean sitting still. And getting somebody to sit still and be quiet, and in quotation marks there, to be regulated, I think is where we see the most distress in people. And I don't know if that's your experience as well.
Yeah, I would, like, there's this, that kind of element of I would definitely resonate with being a highly sensitive person. And I sometimes do feel like I wish I wasn't this way, but it's actually but that's completely for other people's sake. It's not because I don't want to be this way. You know, I actually like that I can pick up on if a child is off, or if, you know, someone feels or comes across anxious. I'm happy that I can sense that so I can help them. But it's other people who don't reach that sensitivity that I'm trying to not make uncomfortable. Because if I'm highly sensitive and someone makes a remark that upsets me and I call them out and they get defensive and then I feel guilty. So I blame myself. I'm like, I wish I didn't feel that because then I wouldn't have to upset them, you know?
Because you're sensitive and you feel they're hurt as well.
So yeah, it's like a vicious cycle. So, but I also think what I have taken from my sensitivity as well is that it's like a master detector of injustice as well. Like you will notice if someone is being mistreated very subtly, and you can come in there and actually voice that or stand up for that person who maybe could be highly sensitive too, but maybe isn't able to voice for it. But you see it all the time in workplaces and in relationships and just everywhere. I would notice a subtle remark or a consistent maybe little pulling at someone that maybe someone else might notice, and I'm sitting there thinking that's really toxic or that's really actually harmful what this person is doing, and no one else can see this, but I can, and it's like a bit of a superpower then, you know. But I think that high sensitivity is appreciated by the right people. You know, some people don't like it because you called them out
because of how it makes them feel like that they
it's like, oh, just get over, I was only joking, I was only messing, and it's like, no, because I'm not laughing. Like that wasn't funny. And I think I've definitely kind of built a much better relationship with my sensitivity in that way. Yeah.
And you're of the highly sensitive people who are able to advocate, because there is many that don't, and in turn they shut down or they adapt and become whatever version they need you to be at that time. That they're the ones I worry for the most. I love that you were able to call it out,
which is only very recent. I would say up until say 6 months ago, 8 months ago, like I would have just, no, everything's my fault, and I just need to stop, and I need to, like, I moved to Australia on my own. I was in Asia on my own, and I reflect on it now, and it's actually, there is an element of I just wanted to get away from everyone so that they didn't have to see me in distress. You know, I just want to be on my own. I used to think I loved my own company, but actually, and I used to think, oh, everyone's just annoying me, but actually, no, I didn't want other people to see. I was trying to even protect others because of, at least if I'm on the other side of the world, they don't need to deal with me, you know, but it's all because it's very complex. It's like, I don't want them to see me upset because it will get them upset. But I also don't want, it's very, I can sense there's that huge kind of trying to protect others, but also
protecting yourself.
Yeah.
Protecting yourself because you have to then deal with their emotions as they're dealing. So it's that kind of back and forth. Yeah. Like, I can't believe you're 24 when I hear you speak, and I've traveled here and I've done this. Like, I'm always surprises me, and I don't want to come back to like, oh, your age, but there's a huge amount of wisdom that you have, and it's come through pain and suffering, because you've had to be in treatment at the age of 14 for 4 months, was it?
Yeah.
Like, to experience that level of hurt, and it's a part that I say to a lot of people that I'm working with. I hate that you've been through this, but because you've been through this, and this isn't a positive psychology lens, but because you've been through this suffering, you have wisdom beyond your years, and you've insight, and you've empathy towards others that people will never get a chance. You can't learn this as a clinician. This is something as a felt experience. So I hate that people have to go through that, but it absolutely gives you such a deep insight. In the last 6 months, you're saying, I'm in the position now where you are ready to just like step up and say, like, fuck you. If somebody says something.
Yeah.
What's the turning point for you?
I think I began to do a lot of my own deeper work, and I sat with a lot of emotion that I was just running from for a long time. And I think, so I would have like my last kind of quote unquote recovery attempt was the beginning of 2024, and I gained a lot of weight, and I then came off medication that I was on for not like 9 years, and I didn't think it was working at the time. Because I felt pretty low anyway. I was like, oh, surely my body has just become like, I don't know, immune or whatever, adaptive to this medication. And my doctor even said, look, I'd be curious to see how effective it really is if you've been on it for so long. So I was put on it at 14 and came off it at 23. And like, I've never, ever experienced anything like it. Like the intensity of emotion. It was like everything was present now. But I would say, I used to say I was so anxious, I was so fearful, but it was like terror, like consistent terror in my body. And then at the beginning, I didn't know, was it like, is this a withdrawal to this medication, or is this my baseline? Like the first few weeks I was like, maybe I'm just withdrawing. My brain needs to readjust or whatever. And then it just actually, nothing was easing, nothing was going away. I was absolutely crippled, like to the point where I just couldn't do anything. And what was really hard was like, I didn't necessarily there wasn't anything really vivid for me that I was like, I'm really anxious about this thing. Like there was nothing. It was just a general sense of just consistent panic and terror. And that was when I was like, right, this needs to be dealt with, because I'm no longer restricting. I'm no longer exercising to cope. Like there's nothing now for me to block this out. And it was all coming up, and I was like, I need to sort this out. So I began working with a lady who we went very deeply into my experiences, and through that, and a big part of my healing has been advocating for me, because for a long time I didn't. So I was probably on the other spectrum of advocating and had to say a lot of FUs, and well, not actually FU, but
you won't even say fuck
no,
you.
No.
But
like because I think something I've learned is that a lot of things that will come up in relationships they typically haven't started in that relationship, but they can end in that relationship. So what I mean by that is like, if a partner or something is triggering, like that you're self-abandoning all the time, that probably didn't start with this partner that you met at 25. It probably started when you were 4, but you can actually heal that part of you in this relationship by actually no longer abandoning yourself. It doesn't have to be done with where it began, because you're not 4 anymore. So I did a lot of that work, put a lot of boundaries in place, and it was really distressing, but it's about sitting with that. And when I say sit with that, I don't mean sit and absolutely like, just because sometimes sitting with it can be very distressing, that like it becomes too much, but it's like sitting with what you can sit with, and really just pushing yourself to the point where it feels like you're able to manage. But I think support and a good environment as well, like somewhere where you feel safe and people who you feel safe around, like is just, I used to think I was the problem if I didn't feel safe in a certain environment. But like, again, it comes back to trust your own gut, trust your intuition. Like there's something off here. You're not imagining it, and you are picking up an energy that's making you feel unsafe, because you do have people in your life where you do feel safe. So it's not you. It's different if you never have anyone ever.
Yeah.
Then it's like, okay, maybe there's something with me. But if there are people that you can feel at ease with, and then there's people that you don't feel at ease with, just listen to that as well. It's important.
I think it's such an important sentence of listening to that.
Yeah.
We heal through our relationships. If we don't heal isolated alone.
Yeah.
And often we think we have to go away and become this perfect human before we can connect.
Yeah.
And we will always be imperfect, and it is just the nature of the human experience. And I don't ever believe that we're healed. I think it's a forever journey of learning to soften the pain, but never making pain disappear.
Yeah.
And having people around us that we can fully be with and be our full self. I think that's where safety lies.
Yeah.
And safety is where recovery happens in all aspects.
Yeah.
And noting that for you, that environment was everything. Like the people you were around, the places that you were with, were the supporting tools in healing.
Yeah.
Jen, thank you so much for coming
Thank
on.
you.
What a beautiful conversation. And if you're not following, I'll tag Jen in all of this. You're such a great advocate, and like, it's beautiful to hear you express things so articulately. And I know this knowledge just has a huge positive knock-on effect, because I send people your way, and then people are like, I love her stuff.
Thank you.
So if you're not following Jen, absolutely make it your business too. I'm excited to hear about your travel journeys. We'll talk about that off camera. But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
No, not at all. Thank you.